Hello, I'm Steve Barnett, Superintendent of the Paulding County School District. Given Paulding County's unique challenges, any decision about opting out of the statewide floating homestead exemption must be made carefully, with a full understanding of how it could impact the future of our schools and community. With that in mind, here are some key considerations and potential risks of the statewide floating homestead exemption and a decision to not opt out. First, it would lock the school district into a permanent statewide one-size-fits-all solution, as opposed to a customized approach that reflects the uniqueness of Paulding County. The exemption would restrict future school boards from making decisions based on local conditions and priorities. The local Board of Education only controls around 40% of our general fund revenue. This further erosion of an already limited local control increases dependency on state and federal funding sources and their controls, as opposed to a locally elected Board of Education. This is unlike other government entities who have more diverse revenue streams and unlimited legal authority to increase property tax rates. The local Board of Education only controls the millage rate up to a statewide cap of 20 mills. At the statewide millage rate cap, future boards would have limited options to raise additional revenue. Reaching the statewide cap could also negatively affect the district's credit rating, leading to higher bond interest rates and increased long-term borrowing costs. The statewide floating homestead exemption could lead to a higher property tax burden for all property owners, as millage rates may need to be adjusted to cover future funding deficits. Speaking of which, you may not know that the school district currently has its lowest millage rate in 18 years, having lowered the rate 3 of the past 5 years, and recently expanded the senior exemption. Our current millage rate is comparable to other large districts in Georgia who, on average, have a significantly larger commercial and industrial tax base. Our current millage rate is lower than the average of our large neighboring districts, and unlike some of our large neighboring school districts and other districts across the state, we do not currently have a bond millage rate. The statewide floating homestead exemption could have a significant impact on the long-term fiscal stability and operations of the school district. For example, as one of the largest, lowest wealth school districts in Georgia, we rely heavily on the equalization grant. Its funding could be materially impacted. In FY 2025, this grant accounted for $34 million, or 7% of the district's total revenue, and has totaled $291 million over the past decade. The statewide floating homestead exemption is designed to control property tax increases during periods of rapid growth. However, it fails to account for economic downturns or declining property values, as seen during the Great Recession, materially limiting our ability to recover from economic downturns. The statewide floating homestead exemption could increase the school district's vulnerability to state funding shortfalls, including mandates and unfunded obligations. Since the Quality Basic Education formula was introduced in 1985, the state of Georgia has implemented 17 austerity cuts, reducing state funding to balance the budget. These cuts resulted in a cumulative loss of more than $148 million for our district. During periods of reduced state funding, which are beyond the control of the local Board of Education, flexibility is critical to make up for shortfalls and ensure that schools continue to operate effectively and meet the needs of our students. The statewide floating homestead exemption would limit the district's ability to invest in local initiatives that support our students and staff, making it more difficult to address critical and emerging needs without relying on additional state or federal assistance. For example, the school district has spent approximately $12 million on safety and security over the last 3 years. The state funded $1.5 million during the same period, in addition to one-time security grants. Another example of locally funded initiatives is compensation. To maintain the most skilled and qualified workforce as possible, the district must remain competitive in compensation. In fiscal year 2024, we increased certified employee pay scales by $3,000. The state funded $2,000, with the additional $1,000 paid locally at a cost of around $4 million annually. Classified employee compensation increases cost approximately $3.5 million the same year, again funded locally. The inflation index used for the statewide floating homestead exemption could be materially different than inflation in Paulding County and other parts of the state, region, or nation. Without the official financial analysis of a fiscal note, the long-term and far-reaching impact of this legislation remains unclear and could pose significant risks to the district's current and future sustainability.